Nope, I think we got a little bit of back.
I just started recording to the cloud.
Perfect.
All right. Well, welcome everyone today. The Women in Cybersecurity Tennessee affiliate welcomes you to the Shifting Security Awareness webinar. And we're very grateful today to have Jules Okafor, CEO of Revolution Cyber, and Ashley Rose, CEO of Living Security. First, let me give you a little background about women in cybersecurity, if you're not already aware. It was established in 2012 by Dr. Amberine Siraj of Tennessee Tech University through a National Science Foundation grant. It's a community that is global of women and men who are dedicated to bringing talented women together to celebrate and foster their passion and drive for cybersecurity. We unite local communities of aspiring and thriving women, cybersecurity professionals around the world to collaborate, share their knowledge, network, and mentor. We also are creating opportunities through professional development, programs, mentors, and conferences, as well as career fairs and more involvement in the community. So we're excited to have you join us today. And let me introduce Barbie Moonaghan, our Women in Cybersecurity Tennessee affiliate president.
Thanks, Janice. If you could go ahead and move to the next slide. So I am so excited to be here, and I'm so excited to be having this conversation today with the amazing people on this call. Again, my name is Barbie Moonaghan, and I am the president of the WiCyS Tennessee affiliate. 5 years ago, when someone would have mentioned security awareness, campaigns like "Don't click the link" and "Don't fall for it" come to mind. I still remember the educational posters, sometimes somewhat confusing, some of them displaying images of people as the fish saying, "Don't get hooked," some of them with credit cards in their mouth saying, "Don't feed the fish." There were a lot of scare tactics. And if I'm being completely authentic and honest with myself, I was in the group who chose judgment rather than understanding. But retrospectively, I have to look at my own personal credo that I wrote well over a decade ago when I was still in customer service. The first 2 points I wrote was, every job is important. Without them, your job is insignificant. And each person has their own expertise. It may not be the same as yours. And within this comes reality check after reality check of, these aren't their failings, they're mine. As much as imposter syndrome sometimes grips me, I am the expert. Security is my domain. And here comes the shift. It's not up to them just to learn or magically know by a few videos or long document reads. It's up to us as experts to change the culture in the company, from how to secure the code that runs our technology to how to protect themselves from falling victim to an attacker. With us today are two industry leaders within the security awareness domain that have set out on their own paths to partner with companies to help not only teach about risks and threats, but to change behavior and challenge the way we look at things. Again, welcome Ashley with Living Security and Jules with Revolution Cyber. You both have such interesting and diverse backgrounds. Can you both tell us a little bit more about what you're doing in the space and what are your journeys that got you here?
Ashley, I guess you said your name first, so we'll let you start.
Awesome. Yes, thank you so much for having me here today, Barbie and Janice. It's really a pleasure to be able to speak out and share our story and my journey with the WiCyS group. I'm, a big supporter and fan of the group and what we're doing across the community and trying to get more women and gender diversity into the cybersecurity space. So really happy to be here. As Barbie mentioned, I came from a very different background, but maybe very similar to some of you on the call. I know definitely Jules and I share a lot of similarities of how we got into cybersecurity. So, and I've always, really wanted to be able to share that with people because I think it's really important to help break down the barriers of people that come from, different diverse backgrounds or maybe different skill sets and expertise. Maybe not feeling like they have something to contribute to, whether it be tech or the cybersecurity industry specifically. So I'll start with family. I am a mom of 3 girls. I was sharing they're about to enter into spring break. So that definitely sets me apart from a majority of the cybersecurity industry today. But my background is also in not in tech, not in cyber. I started out in marketing. And then ended up moving my career into the product space and then eventually into software. On top of that, I've always been kind of an entrepreneurial spirit at heart. Living Security is my second company. And so when I had the opportunity to come into contact with cyber, it was actually through the interaction of what my husband and my co-founder were doing and building a cybersecurity program. It was really a unique experience and unique moment for me to be able to witness and understand that the human part of cybersecurity was actually not all that technical, right? It is essentially focusing on people. And so there was really a need and a gap in the market and a gap in the space to be able to apply a lot of my skill set and my expertise coming from a marketing background. How are we changing behavior? How are we looking at culture? How are we applying a lot of the things that we've done in learning and development and MarTech and ad tech to this typically, kind of technical industry. And so, I think this is why, and Jules, I'm excited for you to share where you're from too. As we've looked at a lot of the vendors and a lot of the companies that are starting up today, the ones that are really succeeding are bringing together multiple disciplines and applying it to this kind of age-old problem set within cybersecurity, which is, people and behavior change and changing culture and managing and measuring risk. So, happy to go into, more of Living Security. Barbie, you kind of tell us how you want to go through this. I'm not sure what the next slide looks like, and talk about kind of my journey to start, or otherwise, Jules, if you want to chime in and maybe give your journey up to date, that would be great.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley. So I am the CEO and founder of Revolution Cyber. I started the company after working with a security company that built custom solutions for large organizations within the energy space. I was their first employee. And in fact, my career set has been in creating new roles for myself in companies and helping them to really build out sales pipelines. So my career is, I was a salesperson, but I have 2 marketing degrees. And so when I entered the space, my first question was, why don't they speak English? Because quite literally, the technical teams would be explaining something to me, and it wouldn't make sense that I go and do research and then I could understand it better. And I just kept saying, there's got to be a simpler way for them to communicate. I also had an experience where I was brought on by one of the world's largest cruise lines to head to the Bahamas. And that was painful. I did it, I spent like a week in the Bahamas going on 3 of their cruise ships, understanding the threat associated with the OT environment, that is the operational technology environment, ICS systems. I met and interviewed their stakeholders, the mariners on board. And then we also had to create a risk assessment. So we got on the ship, had to create a risk assessment, report back to executives. Then we had to create policies, we had to create new procedures, and we also had to create training. And we had to deliver this within a span of 6 months. It was the hardest assignment that I'd been given because I'd only thought I'd be selling it. But we had so many people fail at it who we thought were security experts that I jumped in and decided I had to make it work. And so I believe strongly, and really my passion comes from the fact that much of my success is not tied to my experience in security. It's tied to my ability to be tenacious. It's tied to my ability to ask questions, and really even my legal background. I'm also an attorney. So I know how to tell a story to convince people to do something with very little facts. So that's really why I entered the space. And I feel like there's so much room for people who are not like me or like Ashley, but have their own contributions they can bring to the table. And so my goal with Revolution Cyber is, how do I start the conversation, bring the right people, like Ashley said, it's multidisciplinary, it's cross-functional. And then how do we solve this common problem around changing human behavior in the security area?
No, that's fabulous, Jules and Ashley. Both of you, I think, bring so much with the background. And I also have the marketing aspect of the background of how I got into cyber. So I can definitely relate. And I think the next topic we really want to talk more about is that human risk and behavior change. And I know, Ashley, you've been studying that a lot, as well as Jules, you just mentioned it. So kind of talking a little bit more about that topic and what's happening out there in security awareness, especially given the fact that we're in this pandemic world of a lot of culture and change of people working remotely.
Yeah, it's a great segue into living security, and I'll kind of walk through a little bit of our founding journey and the problem we were solving and what we're still doing today. So founded the company in 2017. And I think what's really exciting about this time and even back there is that there's been this sort of evolution occurring and this transition in our space where, previously security awareness was put in place for that checkbox for compliance. Like Barbie mentioned, we're putting up posters, we're sending out dry PowerPoint, somewhat boring training campaigns. And the goal was to make sure that everybody, took the training, completed it, answered the questions, all within a certain time period so that we could tell audit that we're, 100% compliant. And then, compliant equals secure, right? Well, not quite. So that's when, that's really where we entered. Recognizing that the goal could not be compliance, that the goal needed to be change. I think we got a young visitor maybe on the call with us. And so we really founded the company at that time, focused on two very particular problems in our space. One, that because we were focused on the checkbox, we were actually doing a disservice to our culture and to our employees. People were not engaged. And we know that if they're not engaged, then they're not retaining the information. If they're not retaining the information, there's no way we're going to get to that end result of behavior change. And so that was problem set number one. But the second problem set that we saw in the space was really the lack of visibility. There was no way to really measure and assess what human risk looked like across our organization, let alone at a more granular level, whether that's at a department level or a certain job title or a certain level. So we needed to find a way to provide more metrics and insight and data around what was occurring so that we could then take smarter action, implementing training campaigns that were more focused on the risk that people were facing and in context of their job and making it relevant. And so those were really the two problems that we set out to solve back in 2017. It's obviously been now a 4-year journey. We have multiple product sets that are in market to do that. But at the very highest level, I mean, these are the people that we're working with, the enterprises, the security leadership that buy into the fact that you can actually empower people and change them from your greatest weakness to your greatest asset. And it requires investment and intentionality. And we get to partner with them to help them mature their program and really move beyond that compliance place.
Yeah, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Jules.
No, and I find, what I'll say is my company works with, we're a management consulting firm. So we actually are adding people on site at times, also within projects to actually deliver on awareness, but we're looking to go beyond awareness. So one of the things I'm always doing is going into the market and seeing what's the next vendor of the day in the space and what are they saying? So I actually did a demo of Living Security and I was quite pleased. And I'll tell you, I was quite pleased with their approach. And really, security awareness is about having a sound approach. And the idea is, how do we both make security leaders aware of what the employees think, keep making them aware so that they can loop back into the training what you're finding? That's a huge gap. A lot of times, it's not security awareness, it's security broadcasting. So you're broadcasting a message, you're hoping it's hitting, and then you're like, wait, but our risks aren't going down because they're not connected. So what I would say is, because we are in the services part of the business, we're in the trenches trying to figure out what are the security leaders saying versus what they're doing? Because a lot of times what they say about security and awareness is not what they're doing. So they're saying they need to connect with employees, but they're not meeting with them. They say they need to do better campaigns, but they're using the same images from 1998, black and white, lots of fish hooks. We need to move beyond those in terms of our communication, because one of the things I see that's shifting is there's an expectation by the employee of better design just as a whole. So what we had to do, Revolution Cyber, is say, we actually want to become like a digital marketing agency where we're tailoring campaigns directly for the audience based on a cultural assessment that we do. So what we'll say is, for instance, we have a large global organization. Everyone's very familiar with them. They do a lot of work that is mission driven. And what we've done is we're working with their individual regional hubs and figuring out what the projects are within those hubs. We're tying the security messages to what they actually care about, sustainability, or they care about reduction of child poverty. We've got to tie security very directly in our messaging to what people actually care about. We can't force them to come to us. We have to go to them. And then we've got to bring them back slowly. All of awareness and education is shifting into a negotiation. People are busy, distracted. We are not a priority. So we've got to influence them and inspire them to listen to us. And I think that takes time. And because our industry is so focused on how do we make money, they're not willing to spend the time or the money to do the work. And that's why the risks haven't decreased.
I think Jules' good point was, how do we map what we're doing back to culture? And like, we specifically focus on enterprise companies. And so, typically in the program, like in security awareness programs, maybe they have one. If they even have one full time, that's awesome. But maybe 1 to 5, 10 max really of the companies that we work with, full-time employees that are trying to communicate this message out to 20, 50, 100,000 individuals. And so I absolutely agree that you need to be mapping it back to culture. And there's an element of like personalization. What we've tried to do as a company is, how do we give you like the tools in your toolbox? How do we give you like the platform and the ability to scale something out that does look more personalized? And so that for us, and I love your like more hands-on approach that you're taking from a service perspective. And I think that's extremely valuable. For us, we looked at different ways that we could customize at scale. So giving them the ability to, integrate policies or add their own wrapper on certain campaigns. And Living Security's goal has been to provide them with as many tools as possible. They could look at their toolbox and say, okay, we're talking about privacy this month, or hey, we're seeing a big risk in the phishing, social engineering, or hey, people are reusing passwords. We're having a problem with password hygiene. Mm-hmm. We give them the tools that they can go in, look at the campaign that they want to run, add the marketing messaging, add the material around it, and then scale it out. But I think even more importantly is we work with companies that are trying to move beyond one message to all people to something that's more tailored and targeted. And that's where we can really get more effective. And so that's really where the data layer comes back in. If you're running a baseline assessment and saying, okay, this group of people or this role or this department is really struggling in these areas. Now you're not one person having to take a message and customize it to 100,000 people. Maybe it's only 1,000 people over in the sales department or in our customer support team that really need to hear this message. And so it's not even about quantity then, it's about like quality and being more targeted. And so that's where we're really helping companies kind of move beyond that one size fits all approach.
I think that's interesting that you bring that up, because that's one of the things that we're looking at trying to implement. And it's hard because the developer doesn't need the same training as the HR person does. And when you're trying to bake that conversation or that culture into the company, how do you get that, the HR is not going to care about how the application is developed or whether or not it's OWASP, or anything like that. They're going to care about, well, how do I make sure that my PII or the people that I'm taking care of is protected? So those conversations are very different depending on who it is in the company that you're talking to. So having that more focused training is paramount to being able to shift the focus and being able to move to that next direction.
Yeah, and what we've seen is that, like, unfortunately, and this is all, coming back to the management side of things, is, without the proper tooling or platform, it becomes very time intensive to get more targeted. So you're downloading spreadsheets from here or trying to manipulate them and uploading them into your LMS. And so, that's why when we actually built the platform that we have in market, we took like a drip marketing campaign approach and applied like this audience concept so that you can then segment your users, build different audiences based on roles or risk profiles, and then send out much more targeted and personalized training. So it wasn't all like, when you're thinking about solutions, this is where like multi-disciplines really help, because certain people might say, oh, we need to send out training. Great. Well, we'll just enroll everybody here. We're going to send it out. But I'm like, no, that's not what we do in marketing, right? We use data, we use analytics to be able to segment people. We're doing drip campaigns, and we're measuring along each step to say, is this person converting? Are they engaged, right? Are we changing the behavior that we're looking to drive? But I think even more importantly, Barbie, what you just said, that you've already sort of like bought into the fact that you need to do that. Some of the challenge right now is getting people to kind of remove the blinders of compliance as that overall objective or goal, and tell them, no, like, you started in security because you wanted to reduce risk, and behavior change and risk reduction needs to be your overall objective. Does that mean we lose sight of meeting compliance? Absolutely not. That needs to be a milestone, but we can't lose sight of where we're going, because otherwise we make the wrong decisions, or implement the wrong programs, or set up the wrong kind of metrics for success.
And I think that it has been my experience not to convince. I don't convince anyone of anything. And the reason why is, even when you think about the bell curve of technology adoption, there are the early adopters, and then there are the laggards. And so in my mind, the people who understand the value of awareness are the early adopters today. So my goal is, what do I provide as solution and support to those people? And then what results can I demonstrate to those who are still unconvinced? A lot of the work we're always trying to do is to influence with quick wins, and then to allow that to be the story that goes out into the organization. We find then we get less pushback. It's the same thing with awareness. I even have seen more conversations about the fact that it's not truly awareness anymore. It really is education and influence. And I like to talk a lot about this concept of cyber diplomacy. Where we sit is not in the space of necessarily, and I think to your point, Ashley, there is the importance of tailoring, measuring, and then also scale. What I find to be most helpful is, if you can, within the organization, identify the people that have influence already and leverage that for the purpose of convincing others, it tends to spread faster, because word of mouth spreads faster than even communications that go out. And so what we try to do is really integrate into the places we know that conversations are being had, and it is tied to something they care about that impacts something they care about. So rewards, recognition, promotion, bonuses, salary, all of those things, or loyalty, whatever it is. But ultimately what we're trying to do is, each organization has a heartbeat. It's how do you go in and identify the heartbeat? Because we're called when the regulator says you have to do this in this time. We're called when the CISO has been sitting on this for months, and now he's got to go before the board. And we've got to be able to demonstrate an immediate result. So our campaigns are really like quick and on a dime. And in that, it's about, where do I get the biggest bang for my buck, so that I can either make security be seen as valuable, increase diplomacy from security to the rest of the organization, or justify additional investment in this CISO, in this program, for the purpose of long-term success in the security program. And really, it's about transformation. So I think when we're talking about, I think security awareness is unfortunately it's an unfortunate name for something that's so important, because as you can see, Ashley, most of the time the people doing this are security analysts. They're not even really qualified to do this work in terms of the amount of political capital you need to get people to change. So I think that where we sit is, you have an ability through living security to go out and scale completely. And I think your approach is very, very important. And I'll tell you, compared to the others I've seen, and we all know the guys who are out there, I think that you provide great value. I also think that we have to have boots on the ground to be able to leverage that data, to be able to then position it in ways that actually drives culture change.
Yeah, I love that cyber diplomacy and making sure that you can get buy-in through different parts of the organization and leadership, and really engage with that. And we found that for our clients, those individuals, and I think, Jules, I'm sure you're aware also that as the industry's matured, I think it's fantastic because we're building this like really high quality breed of professionals that like do a fantastic job in awareness and training, and like there's a career path here, and that's very exciting.
And I'm trying to figure out how to help that be very direct. I'm trying to figure out maybe a nonprofit to develop, or an academy to develop security awareness professionals, because I truly believe, like, if I'd known I could do this when I was younger, I would have gone this path early on.
Yeah. And I think that's really valuable, because I think a lot of the program owners that we work with, they're wondering like, hey, what's next? Right. And do I want to move into a director of security? Do I want to become more technical? Do I want to become a CISO? So I actually think this is going to be a very hot topic. It's something we're going to be covering in our upcoming Breaking Security Awareness conference that's coming out this summer as well, because I've heard a lot of questions around career paths. So I think we should definitely come back to this. But yeah, I was going to say, from a diplomacy, our program owners, when you can have great relationships with the communication department, with learning and development, with your SecOps team, right? When you're getting the data, the relationships, I absolutely believe you can get much further. And the cyber champions, that type of program, the champions programs that a lot of organizations are building today, I think is exactly what you're saying, right? How do we get boots on the ground? How do we scale through like a human touch? I think what's been, and this was a question you presented earlier, Barbie and Janice, was, through the pandemic, right, where our champions were actually those individuals that were working like side by side, cubicle by cubicle, right, within the same location. How do we find those people who are influencing even in this like post-pandemic distributed world? And I think that's something that a lot of companies, that like cultural shift that they're still working on. But one thing we found to be really helpful, and I know that you guys had a question on this earlier, was through the like team training experiences and the gamification that we've been able to provide. It's been really unique for us, because when we created the escape room for training and then brought it online, we were thinking, okay, what a great way to train individuals through something that's experiential and immersive, and we'll drive retention and we'll see results. I think a fantastic side effect of that was the ability to build relationships with key decision makers and leadership. So we find a lot of our customers are very strategic about who they bring in the room. Maybe the first participant is going to be that comms department that they're looking to, get out to lunch and they want to, secure a good relationship with. So that next campaign, there's a lot less friction. Or maybe we're going to be targeting our executive team, or, hey, HR is really struggling. We need to like tighten up our bond there. And so I think that, I think the relationships are key. And I think that people are trying to find more creative ways, especially now that we're not in office, to really reach out, connect, and become that kind of value-driven relationship.
Sorry, go ahead. No,
I was just going to real quick, for everyone on the call, because I don't know if everyone's familiar with the escape room concept around gamification. So can you just go into a little bit more real quick detail on what that looks like?
Yeah, and then Barbie, I have a slide in the deck. I don't know if you wanted to throw it up, that talked about the 3 different products that Living Security offers, but it's either way, it's fine. But for those of you on the call, people who aren't familiar with escape rooms for training, if you've ever been to an escape room in the city, or like just for kind of a fun team building event, it's an opportunity for a group of people or a team to go in and solve puzzles, uncover clues, uncover challenges, and they're working against a clock. And there's a storyline that drives the whole experience. And so for the Cyber Escape Online, for our digital experience that we launched here through the pandemic, it takes a very similar approach. where you're getting together with your team, or maybe somebody from your company that you don't know, or maybe it's intentional where you're pairing security awareness and comms together, as I mentioned, and you're on a virtual experience, and it's that same thing. There's a storyline, there's kind of content that's driving, and then you're answering questions and you're solving clues or puzzles that all relate back to some sort of cybersecurity principle. For us, because customization and making sure that we adhere to policy is really important, our clients are able to, customize the questions, answers, and the training nudges. But it becomes a very unique and fun experience. People are competing. There's a leaderboard for the different teams across the organization. And not only is it fun, but it's effective. And that's really what's key here is, again, like we want to encourage engagement. We want to encourage fun. We want to encourage team building. But ultimately, what are we trying to do? We want to get you to buy in, change your behavior, and then we want to reduce risk for our company.
Thanks. And Jules, I think that you were going to tack on as well. So I want to make sure that you have a space too.
No, I think I was saying that someone was asking specifically about how to leverage and transfer your non-technical skill set. What I'll say is that there is a lot of discussion about the importance of having those who are outside the industry come in. What I'll say is that many times those who are non-traditional are treated like vampires, and that someone's got to ask you to come in. You're kind of on the outside. You're like, please, may I come in? So my background has nothing to do with security when it started. And what happened is someone had to be willing to take a risk on me. Someone had to be willing to say, she's got strong security experience. We can use that and leverage that for the purpose of what we need to do and train her in the security piece. So my suggestion is you have to be willing to do apprenticeships, internships, volunteer with organizations like WiCyS or WiCyS, right?
It's anyway, WiCyS.
Okay, got it. So yeah, so essentially the idea is you have to figure out ways to enamor yourself and gain trust before someone will make the investment in you. And that's why I say I spent a lot of time trying to figure out. We brought on apprentices. We've brought on a number of them who work directly on projects, but many of them are referred by someone else. So there is no formal program that Revolution Cyber is offering, but I am looking strongly into finding ways to create forums and also to create opportunities to work on what are security awareness problems in the form of maybe a forum or a meetup group or something like that, because I get this question many times a week. And I feel sad because someone had to take the risk on me. So I want to figure out ways to get more people in. So if you'd like, you can reach out to me via LinkedIn. And I'm still figuring it out. Once I do, I will get back to you. It is so critical that we have non-security people in security awareness, because the security awareness team acts as the communications arm for the security department. And ultimately, you can tell a security program is successful if you see the following. 1, before projects are being done by other teams, they're going to the security team because they know better. 2, there's increased reporting of incidents that no one else knew about except the employee. 3, whenever there is an event or a conversation being held by the security team, there's increased attendance by other members of other departments. And then 4, they're being asked to present to the teams and provide their expertise on behalf of the organization in the area of security. So it's very clear to see when the awareness program is working that's behavioral, but not necessarily tied to security. Someone has to make the organization aware, that's not a security person, that that's okay because that demonstrates engagement. The next step is enablement. What do we give them to help them become more active without us? So there's a process and maturity path I think security programs take. And I think it really requires that it be people who are objectively looking at a problem and can see things that maybe the security industry isn't ready to see just yet.
Yeah, I love what you just said, Jules. And I think this is like the perfect and most appropriate place to talk about it. Of where is that entry point for people that don't have a technical background? And I absolutely believe that through awareness, because it is that communication and PR arm of security, like this is a really fantastic entry point for you. And I would say there's a lot of certification programs. You can go out and learn about cybersecurity. Obviously, there's conferences, whether they're in person or remote. But this was exactly my journey. So, I came in with living security. I brought a marketing and product background. I did have tech background in software, came and started living security. And I just had to go out and absorb and be open to learn and answer questions, go to the conferences. And it absolutely is intimidating to start. I will, like, 100%. And I think, finding support, finding that person, like you said, that's going to believe in you or mentor you through something is absolutely critical. I think there should be more of that. And I think there's more that we're continuing to see, being created in our industry. But our team, Living Security's team, 50% of our team are women. And they come from all different types of background, but they're all women in cybersecurity, right? They're able to come in, make a difference, and make an impact, bringing their skill set, bringing their whole self. Maybe they're not a cyber background. We actually do a lot of training, and we have weekly threat intel updates. So we're doing like our part to train up our team to be successful and secure. But I do believe that this is a fantastic point of entry. And then from here, the world's your oyster. Like, you can start partnering with your tech team. You can partner with, SecOps. You can partner with, anybody that you can get your hands on, find somebody to learn from, and there'll be an opportunity, because we have such a workforce shortage right now. So that's why I love this space, because I just think that it's full of people that are very mission driven, and they really want to make a difference, and they find a way to do it, bringing their background to the cybersecurity industry.
And I guess the answer to the question about someone starting out in their first awareness role, set the lowest expectations you can set for delivering some result. What you don't want to do is go in and set the expectation you're going to change behavior. Typically doesn't happen in year one. What I would say is, if you're in your first role, sit down with the CISO or the security leader and ask them exactly what their initiatives are for that year, so you can tie your awareness goals to what they're actually looking to achieve. You also want to make sure that you are constantly doing and communicating. So you should be communicating twice. You communicate first that it's coming, you do, and then you communicate then that it happened. And the reason why is, if you're acting as kind of the PR, brand management, communications arm, you have to be clear and transparent as a show of sort of respect to the role that you've been given. You also want to, for all of you, be looking for the path towards BISO. That's Business Information Security Officer. If you are a security awareness person, like Ashley said, you develop those relationships. You develop lots and lots of connections to different organizations. You then have the ability to sit alongside the CISO and then share with particular business units what the value is from the CISO role. It may not feel like it, because you'll be focused on a BU or a business unit, but you will have elevated your position inside the organization. There is more revenue to be made. There is more transparency and more visibility for you. But further, you are then setting yourself up for the path to eventually be a CISO. Ann Johnson, who's one of my sponsors, she is the corporate vice president of Microsoft. She also, like myself, started in sales. She then worked her way into a security director role, and has now been CISO and has now been in Microsoft for years. It is possible, but you have to set the path. And when I say BISO, I mean Business Information Security Officer. There are many of those roles that are cropping up now more than ever.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great example. I will say, I do think that in an entry-level position, I think that you can come in and make pretty immediate impact, or that first year, I do think there's an opportunity. But when you're not trying to bite off everything at once, right? If you can really focus on one behavior that you're looking to change. And it's, through the coordination, like you said, with your CISO, what are your objectives? Maybe the objective for the year could be, hey, we want to roll out a password manager across our organization. Well, why are we rolling out a password manager? Because people are reusing passwords, they're not using strong passwords, or maybe they're trying to implement two-factor authentication, right? All of this ties back to a business risk or a security risk decision that will have financial or reputational impact or damage. And so I think through mapping your programs and your campaigns to the CISO's priorities, you can then bite off something that you can tackle, right? So our behavior that we're going to change is we want people to download password managers, and we want them to stop using, easy to guess passwords. So the adoption of the password manager can be one metric that you're looking to, to actually drive that year. So I agree that you should absolutely come in, knowing that you're going to be learning, that you're going to be soaking everything up. But I'm always a big fan. And actually one thing we do for our company is I want somebody to know that they make real impact in week one. And so if you can set up like little milestones on your path, you can show behaviors changing over time versus having to look out, year 2, year 3. But for cultural change, I absolutely agree with you that this is a long form approach for something that's really sustainable. But I'm a big proponent of setting like small achievable goals and driving impact as soon as possible.
So that's wonderful. And it sounds like, and we really appreciate the questions from the audience as well. It sounds like we need to have a whole security awareness program with WiCyS to really expand some of the education that you mentioned, Jules, and some of the opportunities, Ashley, that you're speaking about. And obviously the interest in how do you get engaged in having a career in security awareness, and then where can it go in reference to your, opportunity. And I think the more, and I that's why I've always had, I think, some interest in success, is the more curious you are about what's happening in business and the whole aspect of what goes on in the business, the more you learn, the more valuable you are to the organization in protecting that from the awareness and also the cultural aspect of behavioral change with the individuals.
Yeah, and just being in the room and listening. I think having the ability to take in, even if you're not acting on it, is so helpful as you're learning about security and risk and what's important to the business and what they're most worried about protecting. Definitely.
Exactly. Well, I do want to bring up a couple slides as we start to wrap up at the end, so that both you, Jules, can give a little more background about Revolution Cyber, and I'll be able to show the slide you mentioned, Ashley, about your organization. And then if there's any additional questions that we have as we continue the discussion.
Sure. That's Ashley. Oh, yeah. So we are a privacy and security marketing consulting firm focused on delivering services to organizations big and small who are focused on transforming cybersecurity. The areas we are tasked with today to focus on are cyber diplomacy, security culture driving, brand management. So it's really the security team looking for us to help them to deliver messaging across the organization, but in a way that will immediately have an impact. We're also focused on aligning the threats, like via MITRE ATT&CK, conducting threat assessments, and then figuring out how to roadmap a communications and incident response strategy to those things. So much of the work we do is really active, in that we are sitting alongside on a day-to-day basis the actual security team. And what we also help to do is drive change management programs. So we also do 18-month, 2-year engagements around change management strategy. So if someone, like Ashley said, is rolling out a password manager, our teams will actually put together a strategy for communications, put together all the end user training, align with the technology teams, understand the different vendors, and we will reach out systematically to each department within the organization, letting them know what's coming and what their particular responsibility is. We've been in business since 2019. We started with a really large aviation company. It was our first client. And now we mostly work with mid-sized, high-growth companies, tech companies out of Silicon Valley in California. And then we're also getting a lot more interest from mid-size and like up to $2-3 billion banks and insurance companies. So that's really where we're finding the most area. Much of our custom work today, because a lot of this can be standardized, where we have people sitting on site are with really large global companies. So we've worked with companies like the mission-driven one I've mentioned. We've also worked with really large travel companies, and then, like I said, cruise lines. So we're doing work across the board.
Thank you, Jules.
Thanks.
Great. Yes, and this is Living Security. We were founded in 2017, as I mentioned, and we really focus on helping enterprises to empower employees to make better security decisions that reduce risk. So we are a platform in the human risk management space, and within that platform we have a few different products. I mentioned one, our Teams product. This is the escape room brought online. So team-based experience, really it's gamified, it's fun, and it helps to reduce risk. We work with companies to help them personalize the experience to make sure that they're integrating policy and messaging appropriately. And then we license out the product so that our enterprise organizations can really scale it out across the company. We have a version that doesn't require a host. We actually came out with that this year after the pandemic. And so we're seeing a lot of our organizations leveraging our Teams platform for things like phishing remediation for repeat clickers, or even for new hire training. So as we look to form a more positive culture from day one, well, let's get out in front of them, make security fun, make security engaging, put a kind of face to the name, a face to the team. People love the team-based experience. And then we have our training product. This is essentially a gamified security awareness training platform. We have over 100 different modules that cover all of your general security awareness topics, but we also go deeper into different roles and compliance frameworks as well. It's all backed by a data and analytics platform to help you scale the targeted training, as I mentioned earlier, identifying your weakest areas, and then sending out training campaigns that are really relevant and to the point of where people need the most upskilling or the most training. And then something that we're working on right now that we're really excited about is our unified product. And this really brings everything together for the end-to-end platform. And essentially this is an integration layer into behavioral data, so that we're able to provide more behavioral insights to security leadership, and then get even more specific and targeted with interventions based on real life behavior. So not just looking at our engagement or training data or people's knowledge and retention anymore, but we're actually integrating into systems to see how people are reacting or interacting into their workforce environments. So all of this wraps up together. We typically work with the Global 2000, and a lot of these organizations are using all pieces of this platform for many different use cases. But I'm really excited to also offer you, if you want to flip to the next slide.
Yes.
Awesome. So as part of the offer that I have today, as part of our training program, we've actually developed something that we're calling Campaign in a Box. So we talked about the personalized messaging and marketing and communications being such an important part of our security awareness programs. And we found that this was oftentimes a really heavy lift for our program owners, especially when there's one or two of them with a large workforce that they need to engage with. And so Living Security provides on a monthly basis refreshed content, messages, emails, Slack messages, blog posts, and it all aligns back to either a relevant topic or something that just had come out. So something that had just come out in the news. And we do all the heavy lifting for you. And then you're able to personalize this and then roll it out through Living Security's platform, or if you have another platform that is managing your awareness program. So as part of our offer, we're actually going to be giving out our March Campaign in a Box to WiCyS. Anybody who's seeing this session today or is watching the recording session, I think actually we've given the WiCyS group a very targeted link. You guys can send it out via email. Please take advantage of it. Use one of the campaigns. It's everything that you really need to run a very specific campaign. And I think March is phishing, so I know we're all worried about phishing and social engineering right now.
That is true, and we are very appreciative of that opportunity, Ashley, and thank you so much. And I think what I've heard the most today is that anything that is developed needs to be employee-centric, and that a security awareness training program should always start by assuming the point of view of the employee, from the program's design to the content to the actual delivery. And we've been working on things around a recipe model, so it's really like a good recipe. It's not enough to have great ingredients, you actually need to know what to do with them. And somebody can say, well, a good recipe beats good equipment in creating a good meal. But I think in security training, you basically need a good program that's attuned to your organization's needs and to your employees. And I believe that's what both of you are trying to accomplish, which is really badly needed because it's not just a box and it's not just something that goes out to everybody, as another boring aspect. And I can say that I participated in the escape room and it is fabulously fun. And I know one of the comments from one of the individuals mentioned, somebody said, oh, it's another Zoom, meeting. And that particular individual was one of the ones that was actually most excited about trying to figure out how to get out of that escape room.
And Janice, I'm happy, I mentioned this before, so if anybody is on the call is interested, we have an opportunity. So either whether WiCyS wants to run it as an event, or if you want to get your team involved, we just launched a completely frictionless demo experience, and you can sign up for a session for your team, get on and go through the experience, let us know if you loved it, and that's all available on the site as well.
No, that's great. And I just see the link. So we'll be sure and include that in our information. I do want to open it up just for a moment to see if anyone else has any questions for either of our presenters today. And obviously thank both you, Ashley and Jules, for all of your feedback and insight. It's been a pleasure to host you today, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Janice. Thanks, Barbie.
Well, I will also say thank you to all of our attendees today. Again, I'll reiterate what has already been mentioned. This recording will be replayed for WiCyS World Celebration Day around the world. The time will be 4 o'clock Central on March the 26th. And we will have information on social media going out. And I say this would be a fabulous recording to watch. So thank you for our attendees. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Barbie. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much. This has been such a great session. Thank you very much. I appreciate this.